Burt Reynolds broke his tailbone doing his own stunts, but that iconic final smile? It's actually a grimace of pain cleverly edited to look triumphant. The Trans Am nearly bankrupted the director, and the romance hit a real breakup. These are 20 hidden details in Smokey and the Bandit you completely missed. Number 1. Everyone recognizes the sleek black Pontiac Trans Am as the movie's true star, but Pontiac executives initially refused to provide any vehicles for the production. According to director Hal Needham's autobiography, Studio Brass called the script redneck trash and wanted nothing to do with it. Needham responded by buying 4 Trans Ams with his personal credit cards at a dealership in Sherman Oaks, California, gambling his financial future on the film. Look closely at the opening scenes. The driver's side door panel doesn't quite match the rest of the car's paint job. The budget couldn't cover fixing cosmetic damage from early test runs in Atlanta. That mismatched panel stayed in every frame because they simply ran out of money and time to repair it properly. Number 2. Sally Field seems perfectly cast as runaway bride Carrie, bringing warmth and charm to every scene opposite Reynolds. What audiences didn't know was that Field had just ended a tumultuous off-screen relationship with Reynolds at his Malibu beach house, and demanded a specific clause in her contract: no kissing scenes. Universal Studios had no idea about the breakup when they finalized casting. Watch their supposedly romantic moments throughout the film. They never actually touched lips, only cheeks or foreheads. Every embrace was carefully choreographed by assistant director David Hamburger to avoid mouth-to-mouth contact. In a 1997 Entertainment Weekly interview, Field acknowledged the tension, saying the production felt professionally cordial but personally distant. The chemistry audiences loved was entirely manufactured through camera angles and editing tricks. Number 3. Jackie Gleason arrived on set as Sheriff Buford T. Justice with completely different ideas than what appeared in the script. Needham gave Gleason unprecedented freedom to rewrite his entire character during filming at locations across Georgia, turning stiff dialogue into the manic, improvised insults that defined the role. Every scum bum, every creative dog insult, every frustrated tirade was Gleason making it up on the spot. Watch the background actors in the police station scenes. Several are visibly breaking character, trying not to laugh at Gleason's unexpected rants. According to editor Walter Hanneman, they kept these moments because the genuine reactions felt more authentic than scripted responses. But Gleason's improvisations created a nightmare for Universal's legal department, delaying the film's release by 3 weeks. Number 4. The entire plot revolves around smuggling Coors beer across state lines, and that premise was based on actual criminal operations throughout the 1970s. Coors was genuinely banned for sale east of the Mississippi River until 1986 due to lack of pasteurization and distribution agreements. The production hired a consultant from Texarkana who'd been arrested twice for bootlegging Coors from Texas to Georgia in the early 70s. Look at the beer cases visible in the truck bed during highway scenes. Those are authentic 1970s Coors labels, which were technically illegal to film east of the Mississippi. According to production notes housed at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in Los Angeles, 2 FBI agents actually visited the set in Jonesboro, initially believing a real bootlegging operation was underway. Number 5. The film hit theaters in May 1977, perfectly coinciding with the peak of America's CB radio craze. Universal Studios had already slashed the marketing budget, dismissing Smokey and the Bandit as regional comedy with limited appeal. Executives allocated only $400,000 for promotion, a fraction of typical studio releases. But CB radio enthusiasts discovered the film through word-of-mouth chatter on trucking channels and created grassroots buzz that drove unexpected box office numbers in cities like Memphis and Birmingham. The radio chatter you hear throughout the movie wasn't performed by actors. Sound mixer Jim Webb actually recorded real truckers' voices along Interstate 75 in Georgia. However, test audiences at a screening in Pasadena initially hated the original ending where the Trans Am breaks down and the beer spoils completely. Number 6. Burt Reynolds' injury from that opening jump worsened as filming continued through June and July in the sweltering Georgia heat. He's visibly limping in scenes shot during the final week of production at Lake Lanier, favoring his left side whenever he exits the Trans Am. Reynolds refused hospital treatment or even x-rays because production couldn't afford delays. Insurance premiums were already climbing after the initial accident. Watch him carefully in the Roadhouse sequence. He grabs the car door frame and shifts his weight entirely to his left leg, a clear continuity error the editor kept because they had no usable alternate takes. According to stunt coordinator Buddy Joe Hooker, Reynolds was consuming prescription painkillers between setups, pushing through agony to maintain the shooting schedule that was already 3 weeks behind. Number 7. The circus roadblock scene featured a real elephant from a traveling show in Macon, but filming turned into chaos when the animal unexpectedly charged toward crew crew members. The trainer was immediately fired after it was discovered he'd given the elephant stimulants to make it more energetic on camera. 3 crew members dove behind vehicles as the 2-ton animal barreled through the set near Highway 41. Production shut down for an entire day while animal control officers sedated and removed the elephant. Hal Needham had to locate a different elephant and reshoot the entire sequence 2 weeks later in a different location. If you watch closely during the roadblock scene, 2 completely different elephants appear in wide shots versus close-ups. Different size, different ear shape, different coloring throughout the sequence. Number 8. Jerry Reed composed Eastbound and Down during production, writing lyrics between takes and recording rough vocals in a Hapeville hotel room. The song perfectly captured the film's rebellious spirit, but Universal executives immediately demanded full ownership of the composition rights. Reed refused, triggering a 6-week standoff that delayed post-production at Burbank studio facilities. Studio lawyers argued that work created during filming belonged to Universal under Reed's acting contract. According to Billboard magazine's coverage from August 1977, the dispute nearly resulted in the song being stripped from the final cut entirely. They eventually reached a compromise where Reed retained songwriting credits and royalties. Look at the earliest theatrical prints. The closing credits don't list Reed as songwriter, an omission corrected in later releases after negotiations concluded. Number 9. The bridge collapse sequence used actual explosives rigged by demolitions expert Garland Witt, not visual effects or miniatures. Needham wanted maximum realism and hired Witt to rig charges on an abandoned bridge the production had purchased from Fayette County, but the explosion was miscalculated. Debris flew much farther than anticipated, raining down on crew members positioned 30 yards away near the Flint River. 3 people were hospitalized with lacerations and concussions from flying concrete chunks. An OSHA investigation nearly shut down production entirely, citing inadequate safety protocols. Watch the explosion carefully in slow motion. You can see crew members diving for cover in the background. Genuine panic captured on film. Needham insisted on keeping that take because the authentic fear added visceral impact to the scene. Number 10. Singer Paul Williams shot 4 complete scenes as a rival bootlegger character meant to provide comic relief during the second act. Test audiences at a preview screening in Phoenix found the subplot confusing and tonally inconsistent with the main chase narrative. Universal executives ordered the entire storyline cut from the final edit, removing roughly 12 minutes of footage. But Williams still appears briefly in 2 scenes: the truck stop sequence and the roadside diner scene filmed in Lithonia. He's visible in the background, slightly out of focus, wearing a distinctive white cowboy hat. According to Hahnemann, they didn't have time or budget to reshoot those scenes entirely, so Williams remains as an accidental Easter egg for sharp-eyed viewers who know to look for him in the background chaos. Number 11. Production destroyed all 4 Trans Ams during filming. 3 from stunts and crashes, 1 from mechanical failure caused by constant high-speed driving on Georgia highways. The final car visible in the movie's closing scenes was literally held together with duct tape underneath the body panels and wire wrapped around suspension components by mechanic Bobby Bass. They had no time or money to fix cosmetic issues at that point. Pontiac executives demanded all 4 Trans Ams vehicles returned after filming, likely hoping to refurbish and resell them at dealerships. Needham refused, claiming they were too damaged and unsafe to transport back to Michigan. That final Trans Am sat in a Universal warehouse for years before being sold at auction. Number 12. The MPAA initially threatened Smokey and the Bandit with an R rating due to intimate content in the original cut. Studio pressure to maintain a PG rating intensified as test screenings approached at theaters in Westwood. The original script included a strip club sequence where the Bandit stops to gather information about police positions. Needham filmed the scene with local Atlanta exotic dancers at a real establishment on Peachtree Street, playing it for comedy rather than titillation, but the MPAA threatened an R rating if the sequence remained, citing partial nudity and suggestive dialogue. Watch the Roadhouse sequence carefully. There's an unexplained 15-minute time jump where the characters discuss events that never appear on screen, revealing where footage was removed. Number 13. Mike Henry, who played Sheriff Buford T. Justice's bumbling son, Jr., nearly drowned during a river scene that went catastrophically wrong at the Chattahoochee River. The sequence required Henry to fall from a collapsing dock into shallow water, but the production underestimated the current strength. Henry became trapped underwater by debris from the dock, struggling for nearly 30 seconds before grip operator Tom Morgan dove in to help. Rescue boats were delayed by miscommunication between camera units stationed on opposite riverbanks. Henry suffered water inhalation and was hospitalized overnight at Grady Memorial Hospital for observation. He sued Universal for negligence and unsafe working conditions, eventually settling out of court. Every river scene after the incident uses an obvious stunt double. Different build, different hair color, always shot from behind. Number 14. Production design included numerous Confederate flag symbols on trucks and background vehicles, reflecting the film's southern setting and trucking culture of the era. But internal studio debates erupted about whether these symbols would alienate audiences at theaters nationwide or trigger protests in major cities. Test screenings with mixed-race audiences in Los Angeles and Chicago generated complaint cards specifically mentioning the flags. Needham insisted on keeping the symbols for regional authenticity, arguing the film depicted reality without endorsing political positions. He made a compromise. Wide shots were framed to minimize flag visibility, while close-ups showed them more prominently. The Atlanta premiere sparked small protests outside the Omni Theater from groups opposing Confederate symbolism. According to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's coverage from May 1977, roughly 30 protesters picketed the opening night screening. Number 15. Jackie Gleason was drinking heavily throughout production, struggling with alcohol dependency that had plagued him for years at his home in Fort Lauderdale. Needham quickly recognized the problem and restructured the shooting schedule, ensuring all of Gleason's scenes were filmed before noon while he was relatively functional. According to David Hamburger in a 2015 interview, Gleason would arrive on set at 6 a.m. already showing signs of drinking. Several takes were unusable due to slurred speech or missed marks during filming in Jonesboro. Watch the sheriff's car scenes closely. Gleason is sweating profusely despite air conditioning, a visible symptom of alcohol withdrawal between takes. But production documents at USC's Cinema Arts Library contain multiple notes about morning-only scheduling requirements for the veteran actor. Number 16. Both Burt Reynolds and Sally Field had unknowingly signed two-picture deals with Universal Studios before production began at their Beverly Hills offices. Standard contracts included options for sequels, but neither actor read the fine print carefully. When Smokey and the Bandit became a massive hit, earning over $126 million domestically, Universal immediately exercised those options. Reynolds and Field both expressed reluctance to return for a sequel, but their contracts legally required participation. According to Reynolds' autobiography, he offered to pay Universal $500,000 to void his sequel obligation. The studio refused, recognizing the franchise's profit potential. Field negotiated improved terms for Smokey and the Bandit 2 with producer Moore Engelberg, including higher pay and reduced shooting schedule, but couldn't escape the contract entirely, explaining the sequel's uninspired creative direction. Number 17. General Motors offered Universal free Corvettes for prominent product placement, potentially saving the production over $40,000 in vehicle costs from their Detroit headquarters. Studio executives pushed hard for Needham to accept the deal and the financial relief it represented during budget meetings in Burbank. Needham refused, insisting the Bandit needed to drive a working man's car, not an expensive sports vehicle that would undermine the character's blue-collar credibility. According to production designer Bill Kenny, Needham told GM representatives at a meeting in Atlanta, the Bandit would never drive a Corvette because he'd see it as pretentious. Look carefully at the background when the Bandit visits the sheriff's station. There's a Corvette poster visible on the wall, an ironic Easter egg. Number 18. Jerry Reed's character, the Snowman, was loosely based on a real bootlegger Needham knew from his stunt work days in Texas during the 1960s. The real individual had participated in actual Coors smuggling operations during the early 1970s from El Paso, risking arrest for profit. What the production didn't anticipate was that the real Snowman had also served as a federal informant in a major bootlegging investigation, testimony that led to multiple arrests. When the informant's family learned about the film, they threatened legal action through an attorney in Houston, claiming the character constituted defamation. Universal's legal department negotiated a settlement that required changing the character's full name in the credits. Watch carefully, the name painted on the truck's door changes between early scenes and later ones. Number 19. The climactic chase through downtown Jonesboro wasn't scripted to unfold the way it appears in the final films. Stunt driver Bobby Bass lost control during a relatively simple maneuver and crashed through the front windows of two real storefronts, a hardware store and a small diner on Main Street. The businesses were open. Customers dove for cover as the Trans Am exploded through plate glass windows. Needham, watching from a camera vehicle, made an instant decision to keep filming. Watch the background carefully during this sequence. A store owner is clearly visible yelling at the camera, furious about the destruction. The production company paid $12,000 in immediate damages plus ongoing settlement costs to affected business owners in the area. Number 20. The film's iconic final image, that freeze frame of Burt Reynolds flashing his signature smile, isn't what it appears to be at all. Reynolds was actually grimacing in pain from his broken tailbone, which had worsened throughout the grueling production schedule across Georgia. The original theatrical print shows a wider frame where his physical discomfort is clearly visible in his posture and facial tension. Walter Hanneman recognized the problem during post-production at Universal's facilities and made a creative decision. Zoom in tightly on Reynolds' face, cropping out the rest of his body and reframing the grimace as a smile. That freeze frame, now synonymous with the film's rebellious spirit, was manufactured in the editing room to hide the physical toll production had taken. The rebellious road comedy that defined 1970s cinema was built on broken bones, financial gambles, and creative chaos. Every legendary moment in Smokey and the Bandit conceals production disasters, personal struggles, and last-minute improvisations that somehow created movie magic. The accidents became iconic through sheer determination and luck. Which hidden detail surprised you most, and what film should we open next?